Alright, so in this video we're going to be talking about using angle relationships in order to find angle measures. So, looking at number 1, we need to find the missing measures in each figure, but keep in mind the angle relationships. So number 1, we have a pair of vertical angles because they're across from each other. If they're vertical angles, they have to be congruent. So over here, I'll put vertical angles, and they're congruent. So therefore, x has to be equal to 112 degrees. Pretty easy. So now let's look at number 2. So notice that we have this little box right there that means 90 degrees. So since these are going to add up to 90 degrees, you would just do 90 minus 68. And when you do that, you get 22 degrees. So that means x is going to be equal to 22. Now look at number 3. These fall on a straight line. So these are going to add up to 180. So for this one, you're going to do 180 minus 124. And when you solve for that, you get 56. So x is going to be equal to 56 degrees. Now looking at number 4, we have a bunch of angles we need to solve for. So notice 43 and y are across from each other. Those are going to be vertical angles. And now let me use another color, because x and z are also vertical angles. But first we can identify y. Because it is congruent to 43, y has to be 43, because vertical angles. So now x and z, we can find that by doing 180 minus 43, because these add up to 180. So 180 minus 43 is going to be 137. So that means x is going to be 137 degrees, and z is also 137 degrees, because x and z are vertical angles. They are congruent. So now number 5, once again, we need to solve for all of these missing measures. So we can solve for z first, because since we have this little 90-degree symbol here, we can safely assume that this is also 90 degrees. So over here I'm going to have x, y, and z. To find z, you can do 90 minus 72. And when you do that, you're going to get 18. So we know that z is going to be 18 degrees. Y is actually vertical to 72. So actually, let me make y pink. Since it is vertical to 72, it is congruent to 72 degrees. So that means y also has to be 72 degrees. And then we can find x because y and x add up to 180. So let me make the x green. So now we're going to do 180 minus 72. And then when you solve for that, you get 108. So x is going to be equal to 108 degrees. So now let's look at number 6. 1 and 2 are vertical angles. If the measure of 2 is 105 degrees, find the measure of 1. Well, they tell you that they are vertical angles, which means that they have to be congruent. So therefore, if angle 2 is 105, then we can safely assume that the measure of angle 1 is also going to be 105 degrees. Pretty easy. So now number 7. Angles A and B are complementary angles, and I should have mentioned it earlier, but 2 would be complementary because in number 2 the angles add up to 90. So there you go. Complementary means they add up to 90 degrees. So if the measure of A is going to be 42, find the measure of B. So we do this by doing 90 minus 42. And when you do that, you get 48 degrees. So that means angle B is going to be 48 degrees. So now it says P and Q are supplementary angles. That would be like number 3 because they add up to 180. So over here, I'll put 180 degrees. So the measure of Q is 64 degrees. Find the measure of P. So for this one, you're just going to do 180 minus 64. And when you solve for that, you get 116 degrees. So the measure of angle P is 116. Okay. And now number 9, 1 and 2 form a linear pair. So recall, a linear pair is similar to supplementary angles. They both have to add up to 180 degrees, so they have to be on a straight line. They have to be adjacent to each other. So also very similar to number 3. Looks very similar to that picture. So if the measure of angle 1 is going to be 113, find the measure of angle 2. So similar to number 8, we're going to do 180 minus 113. And when you do that, you're going to get a measure of 67 degrees. Okay? Okay, now let's do a few examples using a little bit of algebra. So looking at number 10 here, they tell you that the measure of PQT is going to be 3x plus 47. So that'd be the angle that's on top. And then it says the measure of SQR, which is the one on the bottom, is 6x minus 25. And to find the measure of SQR. So make note that these two angles are across from each other. They are vertical angles, so they have to be congruent. So you solve for x by setting them equal. So 3x plus 47 is equal to 6x minus 25. So now you combine like terms. So we're going to start by subtracting 3x from both sides, and we're going to have 47 equals 3x minus 25, and then add 25 to both sides. And then you are going to get 72 equals 3x, and then divide 3 from both sides, and x is going to be equal to 24. So now we can find SQR. So over here, SQR is going to be 6 times 24 minus 25. And then when you solve for that, you get 119 degrees. Okay? Now let's solve number 11. So they tell you that AB and CD are perpendicular. So since they are perpendicular, that means that they form a 90-degree angle on both sides. So over here is also a 90-degree angle. DCE is going to be 6x plus 2. And ECB, this little skinny angle, try to squeeze it in, is x plus 8. And we need to find the measure of DCE. So since DCE and ECB add together to be 90 degrees, we have to add them up and then set it equal to 90 degrees. These would be complementary angles. So let's set up the equation. So 7x plus 2 plus x plus 8 is equal to 90 degrees. So now combine like terms. So 7x plus x is going to be 8x. 2 plus 8 is going to be 10. And then that's going to be equal to 90 degrees. And now we solve for x. So subtract 10 from both sides, and you're left with 8x is equal to 80. Divide both sides by 8, and x is going to be equal to 10. So now we need to find the measure of DCE. So over here, DCE, that is going to be 7 times 10 plus 2. So let me make this look a little neater. It's a little messy. So 7 times 10 plus 2. There we go. So now multiply and add everything together, and you get 72 degrees.